Okay, guys, I promised you I would dig out the older Mustang GT intake that I did. The backstory on this is when I was prepping for my then girlfriend that turned into my wife around 2000. So it's been sitting around for over 20 years. So yes, it had 20-year-old Charlie porting that of course I look at now and I'm like, I could fix that a little bit here and there. So I took some flows of the 20-year-old porting and I redid a little bit modern, and we'll see if that makes any difference at all. Charlie learned anything in 20 years. And this is going to go heads up with the later model. I think this was 94, 95, 96, something like that. This manifold. I don't know the exact dates. But this one started in, I think, 87 to 93. I may be wrong a little bit. You can tell this one was cut and welded. Okay, it looks fairly decent. It's got some. It doesn't have my quality that I would do today. And if we look at the bottom, yeah, definitely not my finest work. I think I MIG this with my MIG welder, and if anyone knows, MIGging aluminum is, you kind of need the Cobra head in order to really do a nice job with aluminum. All right. Hey, we can get the numbers off the bottom of this. This is an E7ZE intake. They use these for quite a long time. Down its throat, I definitely did some different work. We need to go through the runner lengths as well. These are definitely much deeper. I measured how deep these are to the back of the 90, and I measured how deep this one is. Okay, there's our measurements, right? The old intake is 4.8 inches inside to the top of the turn, and the new one is 3.4 inches to the top of the turn. So there's no question that getting to these 90s is definitely easier than the older style manifold. Okay? And it makes you wonder why they even changed the design. Well, we'll have to get into that a little bit. It's very interesting how it was done. I think we'll measure the runners and we'll do a couple things on them. Just take a quick look. We're going to be flowing out of this runner here. You can see I got in there pretty good with my 6-inch burrs, as far as I could. And yeah, you can definitely do some work right at that elbow, even without cutting it open. So if I ever do another one of these again, I'm not 100%. Depends on the application. I may not even cut it apart. Okay, same view on the newer manifold. There's the number cast into the bottom of that. Take a look at how that's designed. Compare them. Okay. Now, I didn't go through and measure all the, square inches of volume and so forth like that. But I remember, as I think I said in my last video, I thought this plenum was way bigger. But in reality, that plenum is relatively rectangular and horizontal. This plenum is rectangular and vertical. Okay, they're both pulling off the top of the plenum for the runners. Why would they do that? I'm not sure. I mean, if we measure this face to this and this face to this one's way lower. And I remember these just barely cleared the valve covers. So that's something interesting to think about. There are spacers you can get for these. And the spacer really isn't a bad idea, especially if it's phenolic, because this intake gets really hot. It's like a huge heat sink, right? Either one. Because they're aluminum, so what they do is they get hot from the engine heat, and then they heat up your air charge, which is not good for horsepower. So if you can put a phenolic in here, it'll keep the heat transfer down to the manifold. The manifold will run cooler. I'll give you a little hint of how psycho I was in the 80s. I researched colors and how the heat dissipation of different colors is. That's why this is black. It's actually a flat black. Why is it flat black? You know what? We'll leave that as a question. See if somebody can figure out why that's flat black. Okay. Okay, the flows that you're going to see from this manifold today are going to be with a clay radius put on. And the only reason I did that is because this style requires a different design throttle body. This is a square flange. And this is an offset flange. These are actually wider than these. So they require a different throttle body. So in order to have an apples to apples competition, we tested both of them. It's a number 5 port that's benches. This has been on the bench for a couple days now. All right, we took our straighter port to get a little more flow through, which was on number 4. Everything else has been taped off. And both intakes were done with clay radius. Okay, you can take a good look down the older manifold. You can see how neck down it really is. Let's see if we can get a measurement on that. Alright, it's 1.28 inch wide, but look how tall it is. I bet it's every inch of almost 4 inches tall. Okay? But as everybody knows, right, if we're going from round to a tall rectangular, it's going to take some energy. And the reason they did that was for these two bolts here. Okay, and this has the EGR port through the center of that, so it needs to seal well. This is our EGR port. This actually comes with a cast iron EGR spacer. Let me show you that. All right, this is it's never been touched cast iron EGR spacer. Okay, you can see where it takes the air in from here. Actually, the way it works is the EGR goes from the cylinder head through the base, through this hole, into this chamber. No, maybe that chamber. That chamber is sealed. Into this chamber, goes through your valve, and then enters your intake manifold this way. So these manifolds seem to have quite a bit of EGR dirt in them. Now, I was thinking of a couple different ways to get that out without cutting it open. And you know what else would be a good way to get these a little more flow through them? Acid port them. Fill them with acid. Burn that crap out. Take some of the aluminum out too. Interesting stuff, right guys? Okay, here's the base that matches this intake. I don't think I even finished my story. I was originally doing these for my girlfriend, who became my wife, and the plan was, I picked up this intake, I picked up a set of GT40Ps, brand new, never run, and I worked on them, I picked up a 3.4-inch stroker crank. I picked up a bunch of stuff, and then she wanted a Saturn. So this project literally hasn't done anything in a really, really long time. But it wasn't quite as radical as what I recently did. See, this only has one piece of epoxy, and it's not a huge piece. And you can see, you know, my 20-year-old quality is not what it is today. But it's not terrible. I'm sure I could put this on the bench and flow it. I mean, some of it actually even is cartridge rolled. Some of it's cartridge rolled. Some of it is, oh, you know what a lot of that is? A very light burr. A very light burr. Alright, part 2, because don't touch the wrong button on the phone. So, you can see this isn't as radical a design. The ports are a little bit smaller. I definitely didn't take as much metal out because it's only got epoxy on one spot. Alright, this doesn't have any epoxy on number 1. As far as I'm concerned, this is done for the application it was, you know, set for. But of course, I look at it today and I'm like, oh, I know I can get more out of it. And this base is definitely different. It's definitely different than this base. Let's take a look at the numbers on these. Where are the numbers? Okay. Let's take a look at the numbers over here. Definitely not the same. This has actually got a plug. It goes right into number 5 for vacuum. And when you look down, I don't know. I'm not sure if they're exactly the same. This is the port I would have been flowing out of. That's 4. Let's take a look and see if it's any different. It looks pretty close. I think the basic port layout is exactly the same. Okay. Let me get my head straight where we were and what we're doing. Okay. So, this is the 95 intake. These are the numbers you guys saw last. Okay. And that had the throttle body on it. So this is it without the throttle body. Okay. If you take a look, let's see, let's go from top to bottom. A couple CFM loss with the throttle body, not much at all. You know, 2 or 3 here and there. Okay, take a look at the swirl, hit or miss. Adds or subtract a little bit of swirl here and there. No big deal. But now we're going to take this one and compare it to the older style intake. Okay, far left is the older style intake. The base is all the same. It's the newer design base. Newer design. Well, my modern ported base that has more epoxy action on it because it's a little more radical. And we use number 4 for all the testing. Okay, so this is just the way I took it out of storage with 20-plus-year-old porting on it. And you can see it doesn't have a throttle body on it. But the flows are also pretty darn good. Now, of course, it's not a fair test because one intake was cut open and ported from both sides. So this entire plenum section here has been ported. Okay, all the runner entrances have been changed a little bit, right? The runners have been increased in size, not a huge amount because they didn't need to be, but they've also been textured. So all that makes a difference. This manifold, this is stock, this isn't touched, this is only ported to about here. It's about as far as you can get with the burr because it's curved. Okay, this straight, you can get in quite a bit deeper. Okay? But the as we know, right, that turn takes energy. So without the turn, you have to remember though, this intake has the EGR spacer, a throttle body, and then an elbow that goes to the airbox. So that elbow is what kills you. I don't have all those parts. It'd be nice if we could flow it all together. We'd get even a better representation. I always thought that the reason they changed the intake was to improve the flow. I remember that when I first saw this intake, and I'm like, man, I definitely like the curved neck better than the old one that had the elbow, the throttle body, the EGR spacer attached to the manifold. Well, let's see how we did. 20-year-old porting, got decent swirl through the whole curve. We got decent flows through the whole curve. Now you got to remember, we're going through the base. I also flowed the base by itself, which was tough to do because it just wanted to suck the clay in. But I got about 210 out of the base. So that's about the best we could hope for. Okay, the head by itself is what, 235? So we lose a little bit on the base, which is to be expected. And then of course we're going to lose going through our intakes. So I took this 20-year-old and I did some work to it. Let me put some pluses and minuses in. Okay, now you can see the only parts I could get to was where the throttle body attaches and part of that, I guess you could call it the plenum that attaches to the back plenum. And the runners down to the elbows. But we got some decent gains. I mean, not huge. 2 or 3 all the way down. But you got to remember, in the big scheme of things, 2 or 3 here, 2 or 3 there makes a difference. Okay, and take a look at our swirl. Our swirl is close, but it went up a little bit. Almost everywhere it went up a touch, right? So let's take these numbers and go straight against this manifold and see what we got. Okay, last 2 columns. So this is the older style intake with modern porting, and this is the later model intake with modern porting. Take a look. We've got plus, minus, 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 minus. Now, like I said before, not really a completely fair test. Yeah, they were both tested without the throttle body, with just a clay radius. But this one's had the plenum cut open and re-welded. Now, if I did this today, I bet I can get even more out of that, because I've learned a decent amount in 20 years. Not, a little bit, not much. So, to settle our question, which manifold flows better? I guess it would be dependent upon which one has more work done to it, right? Let's measure these runners and see what we got, because I just think it's interesting the way the design changed and what reason they changed it. Okay, with a flexible tape, my wife's dress thing, measured the length of those runners. They are definitely different in length. Old manifold, about 9 inches. New manifold, about 10 inches. Now, what would be the reason to change that length? We'll leave that in the question section too. Longer runners do something, shorter runners do something. What in the later years of the Mustang did they change that they would have liked a little bit longer runner? I don't know everything about Mustangs, so that would be an interesting trivia question. And I measured the height of both lower intakes. They both looked about the same. Okay, I need you to calculate how many horsepower we can get out of both of these. They're within a couple horsepower of each other, right? But I think I like the older one. And you know, somebody's going to say, why would you bother cutting up the plenum and then making it look like it was never touched? Let's take a look at that again. Like I said, it's not the quality that I would do today. Today I would do it and you wouldn't ever see anything on it at all. Whether I put some epoxy on it or put some body filler on it and make it look absolutely, completely stock. But then again, that takes extra time and effort, you know. The way it is, a quick look, somebody looks under the hood and they're going to say, all right, it's all stock junk. It makes what, 215, 220 horsepower max? Well, you can do quite a bit better with those numbers, guys. Quite a bit better than 210 horsepower. So, yeah, we'll leave that in the comment section. And I think I'm done with these for now. Well, I may redo that older base. Depends. Like I said, if you're interested in either one of these, I think it's time for them to go. Holding on to this for 20 plus years is a little nuts. That one has a set of stock injectors. I have the tubes and stuff that go with that. This one actually has a piece of a harness that goes with it as well. All right, you can get in touch with me, charlesservideo.gmail.com. Thanks a lot, guys.